Hi, I'm Terry Maggart, and welcome back to the channel. The immediate question that I got from everybody was, where did you come up with Backyard Starship? How did it come about? What is the backstory to it? So, it's a two-part situation that starts with two authors, J.N. Chaney, my partner, and myself. We're about a generation apart, and we're steeped in different fandoms, so to speak. I'm a child of the 70s and 80s. I cut my teeth on early anime and horror and things like that. So for me, Jet Jaguar, Godzilla, Ultraman, Battle of the Planets, these are all the things that sort of took seed and planted themselves in my mind and really created who I was early on. So I go in the 80s, I'm in high school, and I write a story about a guy that finds a starship next to a pond in his backyard. And it's the name of the story is Under New Management. It is not a pretty story. It is a sort of more horror, space horror than anything else. So let's fast forward. That obviously I write that and I write some truly terrible poetry and none of it's going to see the light of day. So we skip forward into Jeff's life and Jeff writes a found starship story 17 or 18 years later. So we end up in 2017, a group of readers in Sisters, Oregon, got together and they mentioned to Jeff, hey, there's a guy that writes a lot like you, and he seems kind of like in your vein, and maybe the two of you should write together. Well, that guy was me. So Jeff reaches out to me. We have one phone call, and in 20 minutes, we've sketched out the idea for a post-apocalyptic sci-fi series that we decided to write. And so I start writing, and it turns out Jeff is, we share a mind in a lot of sense about where we come towards a story. Our origin material is quite different, but ultimately we were on the same path. So we write this series, it ends up doing really well, and Jeff says, okay, what's next? What do we do next? Well, the next thing was The Messenger. So The Messenger leads to Starcaster, and Starcaster leads to, in the summer of 2021, I'm in my backyard, and Jeff calls me and he says, hey, what are you thinking about for our next, what's our next idea? So once again, because we speak in a kind of shorthand, we come up with this idea, we blend our two story ideas together about a guy who finds a starship, and then I end up bringing it through my lens because my father is from Iowa, and he was a farm boy from Iowa. And I thought, what if a very ordinary person found a very unordinary object, a starship? And then we take it to the next logical conclusion, which is, well, what if his family is not like everybody else? So that's the creation of Mark Tudor, his grandfather. It's the creation of Van Tudor. It's the creation of the GKU, the Galactic Knights Uniformed, and we're off to the races. I'd like to say it was difficult, but it wasn't. It wasn't. The characters just absolutely flowed. I knew that I was going to create Perry when I walked into my bank, and I lived in a small town in Tennessee, and my bank had purchased a 7-foot bronze, very dark bronze eagle. And it's a huge statue and it's incredible. And as I'm standing there waiting in line, there's a second floor of windows that goes around the bank, and the sun comes through. It's the end of the day, like close to 4 o'clock. And it hits this bird and it like lights its eyes up a little bit, and it casts this sort of supernatural quality to it. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, what if the bird's alive? And, it raises the interesting question of, I decided he was going to be the AI sidekick, but I've never thought of myself as a bird, so I think, how is it to go through life without thumbs? So I started thinking about Perry in terms of he can do a lot of things that humans can't. So Perry's going to have, what we would consider super abilities. He is a combat AI, after all. He's going to be able to process data and do things associated with the law and the prosecution of the law and intelligence in general. But then also he's going to be able to inflict pain in the pursuit of justice. but he's going to do it without opposable thumbs. So that's where Perry came from, and that's how we get the wisecracking guy who ultimately, as you may know, spoiler alert, becomes Van's best friend, and in some ways, the brother that he never had. But there's a more common question that I get, which is, where does Backyard Starship come from? And it's fine to talk about the origin story, but you have to talk about the idea of what Backyard Starship is as a journey of friends, of a story of devotion and loyalty, and honor and morality and all of the qualities that they embody. And it actually goes back to me being 13 years old, 12 or 13, and watching a TV show that ultimately becomes my favorite show, and that is Magnum PI. This is the Cross of St. Catherine. Magnum PI ran for 8 seasons and had just an incredible effect on me for the following reason. First of all, Thomas Sullivan Magnum was an honorable person, which there wasn't a lot of that on television. He was a person that wrestled with doing what was right, even in the face of difficult decisions. I thought it was interesting that he was a veteran who was faced with these horrific memories and choices and everything, and yet he consistently chose the right thing. It was something admirable. That there wasn't a lot of that in American television, so it had an impact on me. And as the years went on, I realized how important it was. It was one of those things that just sticks with you. And the friendship between him and everyone, and it's an ensemble cast in which all of the pieces of the cast are as good as the hero, so to speak. And I thought, that's what I want Backyard to be. I think that I got there. I think that I got there, and it was certainly an unusual place to find such inspiration. But also it tells you that writers are in some ways sponges. We see things around us, we process it through our own lens, and ultimately we turn it into something quite different, something that hopefully is greater than the sum of the parts. And that's what I was hoping for with Van and the crew of the Fafnir and all of them. It seemed logical to me that the characters take off and begin their own journey and become, who they are meant to be, because you sit down and you write a character and you sort of have an idea of the archetype and what role they fill. But ultimately, it's up to the characters. I know that seems a little bit, it surprises me as much as anybody. So, but Magnum PI also had a quality that I embraced completely, wholeheartedly for Backyard Starship, and that's called the collective memory. The collective memory means that the hero doesn't make the same mistakes over and over again, that the friends don't make the same mistakes, that they don't get taken in by the same scams or the same lies or the same appeal to pride or vanity or all those things. The collective memory is what made Magnum PI great, because the characters learned from it. They learned from their experiences and they became different people. Who they were in 1988 was not who they were in 1980. It was obvious they were at their core similar, but they had a rebrand or a rewiring, if you will, and an upgrade in which they became more of what they were actually supposed to be. That was always my goal with Van. I know he's an everyman who, experiences incredible things and is faced with difficult choices. But Van and Icky and Funboy and Tarina and Rab and Val, all of them have their own flaws. But ultimately, the collective memory of the series, I believe, shines through and tells us, okay, these people are real, because the best example I can give you is if I sat down with myself, I'm 56 years old. If I sat down with myself at the age of 25 and tried to have lunch with a clone of me, I don't know that I could do it, because I am not the same person. I am radically different as a person. You recognize that it's me, but you don't recognize the qualities that I embody and the things, because I've had time to season and I've had time to learn and I've had time to become more who I am supposed to be as an adult. Van began as a young man and he morphs over time into a statesman. Tarina begins as a surly, pampered dilettante of sorts and becomes a shaper of statecraft. Even Valant changes, even Jocelyn changes. Fun Boy is as rigorous as he is about his particular quirks. He becomes more because he falls in love and has children and all these things that happen to us. So I'm really pleased with the way it turned out. I hope that explains the origin of it. When I looked at the cover, the first time, it absolutely connected with me. It clicked in my head that what we were doing was telling the exact story that I wanted to tell, that we wanted to tell. When Perry meets Van is, for me, one of those moments as a writer where everything that was flowing through my fingertips was exactly as it came from my mind, with absolutely nothing lost in translation. And I'm so thankful for that. So I hope this gives you a little bit of insight into where the story came from, where they originated, my beginning idea, Jeff's beginning idea. And I hope you love Backyard as much as I do, because writing it has been one of the singular joys of my life. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I will see you here next time.